Cousin Ronnie was a pincher. I know this because my father told me when I was a little girl. I had never actually met this Cousin Ronnie, and I was glad for it. I did not care much for the idea of a pincher in the family. We could do without that. Turns out I didn't need to worry about it because Cousin Ronnie was also in jail. Now this was fascinating to me. I wanted to know why. My dad kind of shrugged, said, I don't know, probably for pinching. The moral of the story was, don't be a pincher. But there was also a secondary lesson here. Once a pincher, always a pincher, at least in my family of origin. Who knows, maybe Cousin Ronnie had given up pinching, but if ever he dared to darken our door, that did not matter. He would always be a pincher. Once we have defined someone, it is hard to redefine them, especially when they have wronged us or someone we love. We remember the pain of the pinch and we hold on to our righteous indignation. This can save us from future pain, but it can also keep us from healing. Over time, our grudges can cause us even more pain than the original insult. And when the tables are turned, when we are the ones defined by the worst thing we've ever done, withheld forgiveness can be the barrier to our own healing. Thankfully, there is another way, the way of Yahweh. The poet who wrote the 25th Psalm implores God to reveal the divine path to those who seek it, praying, make me know your ways, Yahweh. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. I wait all the day long for you. Salvation is worth waiting for, and it does take time. In Hebrew, the original language of this psalm, salvation means healing or wholeness. God leads us to the path of healing and wholeness, but in God's own time, all the day long, maybe longer. God has lots of time to work on us. In the meantime, the psalmist counts on the God of our salvation to remember God's most essential healing qualities. Remember your mercies, Yahweh, your love, your ancient and unwavering love. Pardon the sins of my youth and my rebellious ways. Remember me because of your love, because of your goodness, Yahweh. Our merciful, our loving God will surely forgive our past errors, the sins of our youth, our rebellious ways. God will remember us, not the worst thing we've ever done. How freeing and healing to know that God sees you and God sees me, not our worst mistakes. We are not defined by the sins of our past. Thanks be to God. Until we try to go back home and all anyone sees is a pincher. Jesus had to address this little family systems problem if he was going to lead anyone on the divine way of Yahweh. The way of God, the way Jesus walked, the way he led others to walk, requires one of the hardest things, forgiveness. Now, I want to be perfectly clear before we go any further with this. You need to be safe. You deserve to be safe, and so do other people. If someone has not done their work, if someone is likely to inflict pain or cause harm in any way, then boundaries are not only appropriate, they are necessary. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean granting someone access to hurt you or anyone else. Forgiveness does mean, at the most basic level, that you will not seek retaliation. Jesus addressed this during the Sermon on the Mount, correcting an older biblical teaching. He said, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you. He went on about turning the other cheek and so on. Don't pinch the pincher, lest a pincher ye also would become. Revenge is never as sweet as you would imagine. Worst of all, it doesn't fix the pincher, it only creates another one. All right, no retaliation, fine. Heaping hurt upon hurt does not heal. But what is the path to healing? Well, Jesus told the story of a son who demanded his share of the inheritance, then left home to squander it all on terrible choices. Eventually, he hit rock bottom, found himself sleeping in a pig pen, the worst possible fate a Jewish kid could imagine. So he decided to return home on his knees and beg to become his father's slave. To everyone's surprise, the father welcomed him like royalty, giving him swanky new clothes and a lavish party. This, says Jesus, is what God's love and forgiveness is like. Our merciful, loving God offering us the gift of salvation, of healing, of wholeness. Welcome home. Can you imagine? I can, I've seen it. I once knew an older couple who had lost a son. First, they lost him to drugs and addiction, and then they lost him to incarceration. His crime was rather monstrous, and he was locked up for decades. His parents wondered if he would ever come home, if he would be allowed to come home during their lifetimes. Thanks be to God, he was. He came home eventually and began to care for his parents as a loving, wonderful son, just in their years of declining health. Exactly when they needed him, the son showed up, not as a monster, but as a nurturer, because he had done the work of healing, and through grace and forgiveness, his family welcomed him back so the healing could continue, their healing as well. As the psalmist writes, "And how good and how upright you are, Yahweh. You instruct sinners in the path. You guide the humble in what is right and teach them your way." God's way leads us home when we believe we deserve it, and when others meet us at the gate of the front yard to encourage us. My friend serves a church that hosts several 12-step recovery groups, and mostly the people in those groups only attend the groups. Sometimes they'll wander into church for Sunday morning worship, but that is rare. And yet something is happening in those recovery groups. One woman explained to a church member, "This place is church for me," meaning the room, the community, the group. In that space, she found healing and wholeness, salvation. It wasn't in the sanctuary and it wasn't on Sunday morning, but God was there, leading her to find a better way. She'd always defined herself as an alcoholic. That is part of the 12-step philosophy. But as she healed, she realized that she was not only an alcoholic, she was also a beloved child of God with a future that would not be defined by her past. Sometimes, though, the past dictates where we're allowed to go. I know another church that ministers to people who have a history of incarceration. These folks want to attend church, but some of them are not allowed to be in the vicinity of children due to the nature of their crimes. How could the church welcome them while protecting the children and upholding the law? They began an adult-only worship service on Sunday night. No other groups are allowed to use the church building on that evening, and the sanctuary truly becomes a safe space for those persons and their spouses who long to come home to church. It is a place of salvation, of healing, of slowly learning that they are worthy and loved. Many didn't grow up even knowing that. But that church is welcoming them home, helping them to find the path to love and acceptance. Lives are being changed. Most of us can only imagine how liberating that would be. But even if our own personal stories are less dramatic, we all know what it means to hold on to stories about ourselves, to doubt our worth, our skills, our aptitude, or to wonder if we really are any better than the worst thing we've ever done. Friends, hear the good news. The God who created you sees you for who you are, calls you good, and will show you the path to become the best expression of yourself. That is the gift of Lent, when we allow ourselves to slow down and wonder, where might God be calling me in this season of life? We can trust God as we pray the words of the psalmist. All of your paths, Yahweh, are full of love and faithfulness for those who keep your covenant and testimonies. All of God's paths are love and faithfulness. And every time we pause to reflect on our journey, we have the opportunity to return to God's path of love, the path home. Whatever hurt we carry or regret or even shame does not define our future. The journey to healing and wholeness, salvation, is the way of Jesus, who invites all of us to come and follow, to leave behind what holds us back and find a future where we can thrive. Will we take the path? Will we encourage others to find it as well? God longs to welcome us all home. You and me. And yes, even Cousin Ron.